Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our May onX Hunt 101 Masterclass. We're going to give it a few minutes to let some people kind of roll in and get settled here, make sure everyone gets logged in and everything. While we're waiting, just some housekeeping. Your audio and video are turned off, so we can't see you, we can't hear you, so no worries if you have, dogs barking in the background or kids or anything. No worries there. If you do have questions you'd like to ask during the class, use the Q&A feature along the bottom of your screen. That's the best way for our customer support who's answering those questions to actually get to them and answer them. The chat box along there on the bottom as well is a great spot to talk about, hey, this is where I'm from, or if you have, want to chat with anybody else who's in the class. It's just a little bit harder to keep track of those and to answer questions. So if you have a question, put them in the Q&A, not the chat. This class is being recorded, so it will be available to view on our YouTube channel tomorrow. So if you have to leave early or you missed something, want to rewatch it, you'll get an email tomorrow evening with that YouTube link, but we generally have it up a little bit earlier, say mid-morning, early afternoon. We'll have it available, as are all of our old master classes. We've been doing these types of classes for about a year now, so we've got a pretty good backlog, I think, of maybe near 100 classes at this point of different things that we've done. So make sure and check those out if you're interested in learning more and going kind of beyond this 101 kind of basics class that we do here. I'm going to shut the door behind me here quick. And I want to talk through what we're going to go over today. So we're going to kind of go top to bottom, run through the basics of the app, what you need to know to get started, to be comfortable using the app. To get you out in the field, to make sure that you're confident when you are first using the app, when you're learning how to use it. We're in the middle of spring right now. Hopefully some people have been out hunting, maybe shed hunting, looking for turkeys, looking for morels, getting out fishing, doing all that. So we want to make sure you're confident there, and also as we move into the summer scouting season and into the fall hunting season there. So we're going to talk about how to find your location, how to use the compass mode. We actually just did an update to our compass mode. So there's some cool new things there where the folks that have used it previously, there's going to be some new stuff there for you. We're going to talk about map layers, which is how you can customize the map to have it show the different information from the private lands, public lands, different types of crop data, all kinds of different stuff we'll dive into there. We're going to talk about using offline maps. So that's how you can use the app when you don't have cell service. We'll get into some map tools like waypoints, line distance, and the tracker. We'll talk about using different base maps and why you might want to use one over the other. We'll go over how to search for different things, be they GPS coordinates, be they landowner names, be they landmarks. And then we'll finish up with some question and answer time and a giveaway. We're going to be giving away some pretty cool onX hats at the end of the class, so make sure you stick around for that. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to stop sharing here, and then I am going to start sharing on my phone, and I'm going to show the app there. So give me one moment to get that queued up. All right. So this is the onX Hunt app. When you log in, you're going to see a view similar to this. You can see that blue and white dot in the center of the screen. If I can get my cursor over there, that is my location. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see there I am sitting in our onX office in Missoula, Montana. If you pull up the map and you're not seeing your location, let me get rid of my face there. If you pull up the map and you're not seeing your location, so let's say you're seeing something like this and you're like, I don't know where I am. I'm not seeing where I am. In the lower right-hand corner, there's this button that looks kind of like a crosshair or kind of like a wagon wheel, some people describe it. That's your location button. So if I click that, you can see it turns blue, and then it shows my location on the map. It's going to swing the map to my location. If I click it one more time, it's going to go into what some people call like a flashlight mode or a heads up mode. This is going to show that sight cone, kind of that triangle coming off of my dot. And that's going to be oriented whatever direction my phone is facing. So instead of north being up like we're used to on most conventional maps, whatever direction I'm facing is up. So this is useful for if I'm hiking along a trail or if I'm driving and I want to be able to see what's coming up ahead of me, what's going to be on the right, what's going to be on the left. I'm going to go into this mode here. That way it's easy to see, you know, I need to make a left turn, there it is. Or, hey, there's some elk on my left. Is that public? Is that private? Whatever, versus, you know, it being north, but I'm traveling south, so everything's backwards. So that's what happens when I tap that button a second time. It's a little screwed up here right now because I have this this mouse, but under this dot here, there's a compass. If I tap that, then we're going to go into a true compass mode. So what that looks like, you can see I have my degrees at the top there. As I move my map, that moves around. And I also have a little bit of almost like a rangefinder coming off of this. You can kind of see those dashed marks there. And while we don't have this available on your end yet, what we are coming out with, I think it starts this week, is going to start rolling out this week and next, is our, we call it a rangefinder tool. So if I click on that button, which again, you're not seeing this on your end yet, it is coming soon. This rangefinder tool is really cool for when I'm out in the field. I can range an animal and I can say, all right, that animal is 185 yards away. I can point my phone in that direction, whatever direction I want to go. Obviously, I'm in town here, so it's pointed at the strip mall across the street. But let's pretend we're out in the mountains. And I can, let me get out of this here real quick. I can move this rangefinder and say, all right, 185 yards, let's dial it in. And now I can drop a waypoint on that spot. So this could be, you know, hey, there's a deer over there. Maybe I shot the deer and I know it was 185 yards away and it ran off. And I know I've got to walk across to where it was. Everything's going to look different once I get there. I can drop a waypoint very close to that spot, if not exactly on that spot, so I know where to start blood tracking. You can also use this kind of the opposite way. So my rangefinder that I personally use is, you know, it's 5, 6, 7 years old. It's still a good one, but it's not like some of the new ones where I can range a mile. If I see an animal that is way beyond the capability of my rangefinder, mine ranges about 500 yards, give or take, on like non-reflective stuff. I can take a look at my map and I can say, you know, I'm just going to move this out of the way here. I'm going to turn my phone and I can say, you know, that's 500 yards away. Let's say 600 yards away, because that's how far I scrolled. You know, I can be looking at a rock on the map or an open area in the trees that's 600 yards away. I can't range that with my rangefinder, but I can look at my map and say, I think it's about there. Now, I'm not going to shoot that far personally. Don't have the equipment, don't have the training to do that, but I can drop a waypoint on there and then I can figure out, all right, how can I get close enough? How can I get to 200 yards from there? At least I have a waypoint so that when I start moving, I've got that landmark on my map so that I know where to look. Okay. So again, this rangefinder capability is not available on your app just yet. We are rolling it out very soon. So you will have it, you know, by fall hunting season. You'll have it here very shortly. You do want to make sure you're on the most up-to-date version of the onX app. So if you're not seeing it, you know, soon, double check in the App Store that you're on the most up-to-date version so that you get access to all of these features. So that is the location button and compass mode kind of nuts and bolts right there. I'm going to close out of this for right now. So what I did was I just clicked on the location button again. If I click it one more time, now I'm back to north being up. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to scroll over to an area where there's a mix of some public land and private land, so you can get a good idea of what these map layers look like. So in the lower left-hand corner, click that map layers button. You're going to see a menu that looks something like this. I have Montana chosen as my state. Your state might be Montana, it might be something different, whatever you chose when you set up your account. If I click on that folder, that Montana folder, I can see all of the layers that are available for Montana there. Your state may look a little bit different. What it will have are private lands, government lands. Almost every state will have some variation of hunting districts. It may be called GMUs. It may be called hunt zones. It may be called hunt areas, maybe called management areas. Every state words it a little bit differently. And you're going to have a possible access layer. The rest of these layers, which we'll get to in a moment, are more state specific. But starting with the private land layer, that is the one, like it says, is going to show you the private land ownership information, the boundaries, and the ownership names. When it's turned off, it looks like this. You see, it's not highlighted. It doesn't have that green button. And I should mention, I'm on an iPhone. If you're on an Android phone, it may look a little bit different just because the two platforms have a little bit different styles on them. It's going to work the same. This is just an iPhone on mine. So if you're saying mine doesn't look exactly like that, I'm guessing you're on an Android. But the private lands and the government lands and the hunting district layers are three that I always have turned on, along with the possible access. But I would say for 99% of people, private lands, government lands, hunting districts, I would have those turned on all the time. That's really kind of the nuts and bolts, the bread and butter of what onX is and what we do. So for example, you can see my map has some different coloration on it. There's kind of this bluish color. There's a greenish color. I'm just going to scroll away from this polka dotted here for a moment. If I zoom in, this is going to be a private land. Now you can kind of see I got state land here. I got national forest. I got private land. If I turn off my government lands layer, you can see that goes away. If I turn off the private land layer, you can see that boundary went away. And if you're ever wondering what something is on the map, you're like, man, this blue, what is that? What kind of land is that? Click on it or tap on it if you're on your phone. That's going to tell me this is state of Montana land. It's going to tell me what county I'm in, what area I am, and then what hunt unit it is. Right now, I'm doing some bear hunting. I lucked out and got my 2 turkeys about a week ago. So I switched my unit over to bear. It was at turkey. Now it's on bear. Yours is probably defaulted to a deer unit. That's what most states default to, because in most states, that's the most commonly hunted animal, at least in the lower 48 and certainly east of the Rockies. If I want to change my hunt unit, it's easy to do. I go into hunt map layers, go into my folder, and then I'm going to click view options for the hunting districts. And this is a question we get quite a bit. Wyoming is notorious for it because Wyoming breaks up their big game species more than I think just about any other state does. They have antelope units, they have elk units, they have mule deer units, they have bighorn sheep. And you can see Montana has some of that as well, but our deer and elk units are the same, and mountain lion are the same, for example. Whereas in Wyoming, they're all different. So if you're looking at, say, your state's hunting regulations, and you're saying, man, these lines aren't matching up with what onX is showing, take a look and make sure you have the correct species selected. All you need to do is just click on the one you want to use. And you're only able to have one turned on at a time. Otherwise, if you turned a whole bunch of them on, there'd be all these different green lines all over the map. and it wouldn't be very easy to suss out what is what. So that's how you're able to change, we call these sub layers for the different hunting districts. There's a few other layers that have sub layers in them. You can tell which ones do by this little graphic here. In Montana, we have 16 different hunting district options. Your state, there might be 5, there might be 2, there might be none. They might all be the same. Again, it's dependent on your state. The possible access layer is another kind of hidden gem I like to tell people about. Those are private lands that may be open to public access. So those are generally going to be lands that are owned by timber companies is a big one. So it might be, you know, Weyerhaeuser, or I don't know if Plum Creek is still in operation, or Blandin, or whoever. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times those timber companies allow public access. They allow people to hike, camp, hunt, fish on their lands, to recreate on their lands. Other examples of this are Nature Conservancy, local land trusts, local NGOs, folks like that, where they are technically private lands, but they quite often allow access. So this is an example. This is a layer where it's not guaranteeing, hey, you can go there and you can go hunt and kind of do what you want. It's one highlighting, this might be a spot you can go. It's owned by group XYZ. Excuse me. It's owned by group XYZ. You may want to check with them to see the rules and regulations, because even if they do allow hunting access or recreational access, they may have some other, you know, rules. It's all roadless, or no campfires allowed, things like that. Last layer I want to talk about in the state folder is the Montana block management layer. Now, this is a walk-in access program where landowners, you know, private landowners, ranchers, farmers, etc., will allow hunting access to their lands. Your state may or may not have a program like this. I want to say there's more states every year that are coming on with this. I know it's more than 20 states have this. I think it may be even 30 or so. These types of programs kind of started in the West, but more and more states east of the Rockies are getting these programs enacted. So it's a cool thing. You know, I think Kansas was one of the first ones with walk-in hunter access, or WIHA. North Dakota has public lands open to sportsmen, or plots. Wyoming has access, yes. A lot of different states have these programs. So that's another good option if you're looking for places that you can hunt near you, especially if you're in a state that doesn't have a lot of public land, or you're in an area of a state where there's not a public land, or maybe you're hunting a species that doesn't frequent public land. Here in Western Montana, a lot of our turkeys in the spring are still down low in the valleys that are typically private. That's a good option. If you're looking to hunt turkeys, check out some of those block management areas. So that's going to kind of wrap up our state layers there. And if you have no state showing there, which I don't believe shouldn't really be possible, but if you don't have a state showing there at all you need to do is expand this menu and scroll down, and you can see all of the states listed there, as well as Canada. We recently added Canada. So if you have a premium membership, that's our $29.99 membership, you get one state that you can turn on and view the private lands and the public lands and all that. If you have an elite membership, that's our $99.99 a year membership, you get access to all 50 states plus Canada. So if I wanted to turn on another state, let's say I'm going to go to Louisiana, all I have to do is click that slider button, and now Louisiana is turned on for me, and I can see Louisiana. If I can, I'm still getting used to using this mouse on my phone here. There we go. Now I can see Louisiana listed here among my layers, and I can turn those layers on and off. So that's our state layers. Going into a couple of our other folders here, current conditions. So these are all, excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of water here so I don't keep coughing. So I should back up. State layers are what they sound like. That's data within that state. The rest of these folders are nationwide. So even if you don't have the nationwide elite membership, if you have a premium membership, you still get access to these nationwide layers. And you can see this data across the country, and some of these are international now into Canada. One that I always have turned on is our active wildfire layer. Now, we don't have a whole lot of wildfires, at least where I am in Montana right now, but I can show you an example of what that looks like. If I can stop clicking the wrong button here. I'm going to go up north of Montana, or north of Missoula. And so this is a controlled burn that they're doing kind of up by the town of Frenchtown here. So all I have to do is click on that flame icon, and it gives me the information. It'll tell me the name of the fire. It'll tell us when we last checked the fire data. So onX, we checked today our data source telling us where these fires are and how much they're burning. Our source last updated this yesterday. Okay, so we check multiple times a day, but the source doesn't always update that often. Sometimes this date, this should almost always say today's date. The source updated, it could be a week ago, it could be 2 weeks ago. So we don't change anything until our source does, because they're kind of the source of truth there. We trust the managing agency, to keep us up to date on all of that. In this fire, you'll notice, I'm getting a pop up here. This fire, you'll notice, doesn't have a perimeter around it. That's because it's a controlled burn. It's a prescribed fire. In an actual kind of wildfire, be it from a lightning strike or an errant cigarette or something like that, there will be kind of a red polygon and kind of amorphous shape around the center of that fire icon, showing you the perimeter of that fire, at least as far as the perimeter has been mapped out at its current state. So you'll start seeing those once we kind of get into wildfire season here. Unfortunately, it's coming up pretty soon. We'll see what this year's like with all the snow everybody's been getting. Maybe that'll give us a reprieve from some of the smoke, later on this year. So that's the active wildfire layer. I'm going to open up my map menu again. I'm going to go to my land and access folder. And if I click that, there's a bunch of different layers in here. I'm not going to have time to go over all of them. Couple I wanted to highlight. Wilderness areas should be turned on. And that's big W wilderness, federally designated wilderness areas. It's going to show you where those are. They're the non-motorized areas, places like that. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service hunt areas, these are going to be typically your refuges. Be they duck refuge, be they a refuge for some other type of animal. And a couple other ones that I turn on, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. Those are showing lands where the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever have done work, where they've acquired properties and either opened up access and or conveyed them to the public trust, to the Forest Service, to a state, to the Fish and Wildlife Service. They'll show you where easements and things like that. They've helped acquire them. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of those layers. First, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service layer. South of town, there's a refuge here. So I can see it's got that bright green color. And it's also going to tell me, if hunting is allowed or not in this refuge. And you can see there are certain areas where it isn't. If I zoom in here, this is all no hunting. Where this red diagonal line is, it says no hunting. It's also going to show me different units. A lot of times they're broken down into different units. This particular refuge allows archery whitetail hunting and waterfowl hunting. This northern unit here, you can see they have archery hunting allowed. This southern unit, if I zoom in a little bit, is waterfowl hunting. If you want more information, just like everything else, click on the map. It's going to tell me Lee Metcalf National Wildlife Refuge. It's going to tell me this is in a restricted hunt district. There's no rifle hunting allowed. And if I want more information on the Lee Metcalf National Wildlife Refuge, I can click this more info button and this hunting URL button. That's going to bring me to the Fish and Wildlife Service website, where it will give me all the specifics of the rules and regulations. I really recommend you do that, because refuges, especially, a lot of times they'll have like a check-in system where you have to check in and out of a duck blind, for example, or maybe they have a lottery to even get a blind, or the refuge is closed to hunting on certain days of the week, things like that. So make sure you're double checking that, make sure you're staying legal if you're going to hunt, those lands especially. If I zoom out here, I'm going to show if I can find, here's an example of what the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation layer looks like. So if I click on it again, it's going to tell me this is Lolo National Forest, but this was an acquisition that the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation helped facilitate. It was private. Now it's public. Not all of these are going to be public all the time, because sometimes the Elk Foundation will acquire a parcel and it takes a little bit of time to convey it to another managing agency, BLM, Forest Service, whatever. But that's kind of a cool layer, to see the work that they've been doing, but also there might be some land that other people don't know is open to hunting that you can find on the map there. Back into our layers, there's a few more I want to highlight. If I go to roads, trails, and rec, some that I always have turned on are trails, trail slope, trail mileages, motorized roads and trails is a big one, as well as recreation sites. So recreation sites are just going to show as like a singular point on your map. These are going to be things like boat launches, fishing access sites, campgrounds, Forest Service cabins, things like that. The motorized roads and trails, I'm going to close out of this menu and move over and give you an example of that. So all of these purple lines, those are those motorized roads and trails. They're going to be on Forest Service land is where we get that data. And that's going to show you those roads where motorized use is allowed. So these are typically going to be your more maintained Forest Service roads. They may still have obstacles in them. They may still be very rough, but they're going to be more maintained than, some other roads that are out there that aren't included in this layer. A lot of times there are old logging roads that were punched in when they logged a certain unit and then haven't had any maintenance since. I've driven out there and, and there's a spruce tree that's 15 feet tall in the middle of the road because there was a road there, but there isn't any more really. These are roads that should be more open, wider, gravel roads. To get more information about the road, again, I clicked on it. It's going to give me the name of the road number. The big one for me is the open and close dates. Now this one you can see is open year round. Some of these will have just opened maybe yesterday on May 1st. I know we have around Missoula, a lot of them will open on like May 15th, a bunch of roads open, and then a bunch will open in June. And then some roads close with the start of archery season, more roads close with the start of rifle season, and then a whole bunch of them will close the day after rifle season ends. We do that in Montana just because it kind of helps with hunting pressure and to help kind of protect those animals or have more sanctuary areas versus having everything be open to motorized travel all the time. The ones in the spring, it's kind of, there's an elk calving area. We don't want everybody ripping through there while the elk are having their babies and disturbing them, things like that. So make sure you double check a road before you drive out there, make sure it's open, and make sure that it is accessible by your vehicle. Some of these roads on here are only for dirt bikes, for example. They have a width restriction. You won't be able to get a car down it if you tried. Some of them are for ATVs only. They've got like that 50-inch width restriction. I guess, most of them would be ATVs and dirt bikes. This one, I know I can get my vehicle down it, my passenger car. I may not be taking my Pontiac Grand Am down it, but my Chevy Suburban, I'm going to be okay on it. So make sure that you're checking those open and close dates as well as those width restrictions. And again, that motorized roads and trails layer is predominantly going to be found on Forest Service. If I move us a little closer to town here, these lines you see on your map are non-motorized trails, hiking trails. So this is the M Trail in Missoula, pretty popular hiking spot with locals. You can see the M here. And why they're colored differently is because I have the slope layer on. That's going to color code the trail based on how steep it is. So you can see this trail here is pretty steep because it's red. The M zigzag trail is orange, so slightly less steep. If I go over to the fire road, it's green because once I get up here, it's pretty flat. You can see it kind of side hills there. So that's a cool one to have turned on. You don't have to have it turned on. These will just show up kind of as black dotted lines. I usually do like to see the trail slope because it's nice to see, hey man, this section's really steep. Maybe that's a good spot to hunt because it's going to keep some people out. Or maybe, hey man, I've been hiking all day and I'm feeling gassed. I don't necessarily want to take this really steep trail. Let's find someplace else, or let's find another route in. A couple more folders to just touch on real quickly before we move on. Our trees, crops, and cover layer. There's a couple layers in here that there's one I always have turned on. That's the timber cuts layer. I'm not going to show it on the map just in the interest of time, but these are on Forest Service lands again, because the Forest Service keeps that data and makes it available to us. That's going to show where logging has occurred. So you're going to see, you'll see a highlighted area within the Forest Service with a date within it or a year within it. It'll be, so it might say 2015. If I click on it, it'll give me the name of that kind of cutting block, and it'll tell me this was thinning, or this was a clear cut, or this was selective harvest. So that's one I always have turned on. Super useful for, finding those areas. I'm a grouse hunter. Grouse love to be in those areas that were cut, aspen stands that were cut 10 years ago. Great spot to go. Another one I have turned on is the historic wildfire. That's one I can show you real quick here. So the historic wildfire, oops, I'm getting my mice mixed up between my computer and my phone here. So the historic wildfire, what it sounds like, these are fires that burned previous years. This is a big one, kind of south of Missoula here, the Lolo Peak fire. You can see the date and the name on it. If I click on it, like everything, it's going to tell me more information. Lolo Peak, 53,822 acres, September 2017. So those are good for, everybody knows elk really love those burnt over areas. This was a pretty nasty fire and it burned a lot. So it's been taking quite a while for some of that forage to come back. But I was down in this area a couple nights ago. I saw a group of cow elk feeding in there because some green shoots are coming up. If you find a fire from 2021 or 2022 that maybe didn't burn super intensely, wasn't so much that it started destroying some of the seeds and stuff in the seed bank in there, that's going to be a money elk, deer spot, bear spot, because that's where that fresh green growth is coming up. This is a layer I typically don't have turned on my phone when I'm hunting, because you can see it can kind of obscure the map a little bit. I think of this more as a scouting layer that I will turn on my computer when I'm scouting out for an upcoming season. And then I typically, like I said, don't use it as much on my phone, but it is nice to have when I want it there. That was the wrong menu. Getting back to trees, crops, and cover. We don't have time to go into all of these tree and crop layers. It's a bit beyond the scope of a 101, but they are there for you. Our crop distribution layer is showing you what was planted last year. We have 19 different crops. So whether you're in a corn and soybean area, whether you're in an area where there's a lot of cotton or canola or potatoes, you name it, we've probably got it. So you can use that to tell, all right, what was planted last year and then what's likely to be planted this year. I grew up in central Minnesota. It's corn, soybean country for the most part. And I know that if it was soybeans, a soybean field last year, pretty good chance it's going to be corn this year. So I can look at those soybean fields from last year and figure probably going to be corn this year. Out here in Western Montana, there's a lot of alfalfa that typically stays alfalfa for a number of years. So I can use that kind of in the same way. The tree data, we update that every year. And that is, they do flyovers. It's called aerial spectrometry, which I had to practice a lot to say that word. That is going to tell you the main type of tree in a given block. So if you turn these layers on, like our coniferous tree distribution, it's going to turn on and highlight areas where coniferous trees are the dominant species. You'll see little squares on your map. Each one of those is 30 by 30 meters. And let's say it says that it's fir, hemlock, and spruce. I know that in that 30 by 30 meter block, that's the dominant tree species. Could there be other stuff in there? Sure. You know, it's very rare that it's just one kind of monoculture in a lot of areas, but that's the dominant one. Some other kind of wildlife specific ones. I mentioned young aspen forests earlier. All kinds of species love young aspen stands. Those are aspen stands that are 15 years old or younger. Acorn producing oaks is another huge one, especially for deer hunters, turkey hunters. That is showing acorns that are capable of producing, or excuse me, oaks that are capable of producing acorns. So we know a lot of acorn trees, or a lot of oak trees, excuse me, only produce acorns on certain years. It's not every single year they have a bumper crop. So this isn't necessarily saying, hey, there's acorns here, go hunt. It's saying these trees are mature enough to produce an acorn crop. So I'm going to close out of my layers menu. There's a lot in here, and there's a lot we didn't touch on. My recommendation is to play around with the map layers. Turn stuff on, turn stuff off. You can't really break anything. You can't delete a layer. If you're looking for a layer and you're saying, man, it's not showing on my map, or I'm not seeing it in the menu, you know, you may have removed a state and brought it down here. Otherwise, they're all going to be listed in one of these folders. It may just be in one that you're not looking at. Okay, so map layers. Moving on to offline maps. This is the offline map menu. It's this lower left icon on my phone. This is how I can use the app when I don't have cell service, which is a lot of places in Montana. Once I opened that up, you can see I have some green boxes and some red and white boxes on my map. Those are maps, offline maps that I had saved previously. So if I zoom out, you can see I've been saving them all over kind of Western Montana during these 101 classes we've done. If I want to save a new one, let's say I'm going to go down in this area. I'm going to click on the offline maps button. I'm going to click new map, and you can see this red box pops up. And again, if you're on an Android, it might look a little bit different than this. Functionality is going to be very much the same. But whatever's within this red box here is what's going to be saved on my map, saved on my phone. I can still move it around. I can adjust it to get it just where I want it. And I can also choose the size. By default, it's going to go to a medium resolution or a 10-mile map. So that's 10 miles wide, and it's a little bit more than 10 miles long because it's shaped to kind of fit your phone screen, which is more of a rectangle. I can go down to a 5-mile wide map if I want, or I can go up to a 150-mile wide map. You can see I've got one of those big boxes highlighting Western Montana. We'll talk about why there's different colors here in a minute. Most of the time, I save a 10-mile map. It gives me a big enough area while also still giving me good imagery resolution. That 150-mile map is good for covering a lot of territory, but when I zoom in, the imagery is not going to be quite as crisp. And that's just because of the download size. We are making some different options for how to save a map in the future that are kind of slowly rolling out throughout this year. So things will look a little bit different here on a lot of your phones in the future, but for right now, these are the options, at least on an iPhone. What I recommend as well is rename your map, because once you have them saved, I want to know where I have this map saved. You know, for lack of a better name, this is in Southwest Montana. That's what I'm going to put in there, so that in the future I can be like, oh yeah, I have a map saved there. I can go back and look and it doesn't just show that date there. I'm going to click done, and then I'm going to hit save. And that's going to start saving that map. I talked earlier about all these other boxes here. So these are all these other maps I've got saved on this test account. If I go into my menu and I expand this, you can see these are all the maps that I have saved previously. You can see some have just the generic date and time for a name. Some have, I saved this one on April 5th. This Bob one I know is in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. So these are all the maps I have saved. If I click on one, it's going to bring me to that map and show me where it is. As you can see, I'm in the Bob Marshall Wilderness there. Some of these maps have a green highlight, if I close out of this, and some have a red and white candy stripe. If I go into my menu, I can also see some have a green check mark, some have a down arrow. So any of these with a green check mark will be the green border on my map as well. That means they're downloaded on my device and available for use. If you see the red and white kind of pinstripe or candy stripe, and or if you see one that has this down arrow, that means that I had saved a map on this account, but it's not on this device. So there's a couple ways that could happen. Let's say I have a tablet that I use as well as my phone, and I like to use my tablet at home and I take my phone in the field. I can be logged in to both devices with my same email and password. I can save a bunch of offline maps on my tablet, but they won't automatically download to my phone. They'll look like this because my phone recognizes, hey, on this account, there was a map saved, but it's not downloaded on this device. If I want to download it to the device I'm going to take in the field, all I have to do is click that download button, that down arrow, and it's going to start downloading it. And then the map, the box on my phone will show green. Okay, that's going to take a little bit of time to download. You can see I have some that were downloaded here, some that weren't. What could also happen is, let's say this map here, I no longer need on my phone, but I might need it in the future. I can delete it, which wipes it off of everything. It's gone. Or I can remove it from this device. So if I have it downloaded on my tablet, it's still going to be there. Or let's say I don't need this right now, but I may need it in the future. I just want to save some storage space on my phone. I can hit remove from device. If I can click the right button, and you can see it kind of goes into this state. So I do this with, I have a lot of offline maps saved in Eastern Montana where I pronghorn hunt, but I don't draw a pronghorn tag every year. So on years where I don't have a tag, I offload all those maps. When I go out there hunting, it's typically for, maybe a few days or a week. I'll download all those maps again. I go out to Eastern Montana and pronghorn hunting. Hopefully I get something. When I come back, I'll offload those maps again because I live in Missoula. I do most of my hunting in Western Montana. Last thing to mention here, you might notice that some of these say update available. What does that mean? That means that something has changed on that map. Okay, something has been updated on our end. It might be private parcel information. It might be some trails data that changed. It might be different hunting units that have changed. It might be different aerial imagery. Does this mean that I can't use this Bob Marshall map? It says update available. That's a question we get. They're like, oh man, I was driving out and said update available. I had to stop and find Wi-Fi to update it. The map is still usable, even if there is an update available. It'll still work. It just means there's something that's out of date. To update it, the easiest way that I've found is to just click that green check mark. You can also click the ellipses and hit update. Either way works. If I want to do all of them, I can click the ellipses up at the top of the menu and hit update all maps. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's how you can update them. And you're going to see that update available quite often on your map. We're constantly updating data. You might notice it almost every day if you update every day. I would recommend, don't worry about doing an update until, the night before, or a few days before you're going to head out. If you're going to go out hunting this weekend, Friday afternoon, Friday night, go ahead and update those, and then you're good. If you're driving out and you say, oh man, it says update available, but you don't have good service, don't worry about it. Your map's still going to work. Like I said, just update it when you get back. So that's, again, kind of nuts and bolts of offline maps there. One thing I do recommend, if you're going to be in an area without cell service or with minimal cell service, is to put your phone into airplane mode. That is going to save your battery quite a bit. So you put it into airplane mode. When you do that, you're going to see, if I can get up to the top here again, you'll see this button will highlight red and it'll say offline. That's the state you want this to be in when you're out in the field using offline maps. That means your app is going to default to loading the information from these maps. If you're out there and there's a little bit of service, it might say go offline. What I would recommend, either click this go offline button, or better, put your phone in airplane mode. Then the app, because the app can sometimes get a little confused. If you have like 2-3 bars of service, it might try to download the imagery, via cell connection, and it'll eventually get there, but it might take a long time if you don't have full service. Either put it into offline mode or go into airplane mode. That tells the app, stop using cell service, stop trying to connect to the internet, and just download those offline maps, or use those offline maps rather, that were downloaded to the phone. The other benefit of airplane mode is saving your battery life. Like I said, two biggest draws on your phone's battery typically are your phone screen and if it's searching for service. And that's really the big one. If you're out and it's, a couple bars, you're in and out of service or no service at all, you're going to drain your phone battery pretty quick. If you put it in airplane mode, I've gotten where, I'm typically back to my truck or back to a house at night. Most of my hunting is day hunting. But I've gotten to where I put it in airplane mode when I leave the truck. I hunt all day. I come back and I'm still well over 50%. And I use my phone a lot out in the woods, working for onX. I'm always using it, probably more than most people. But that still, with airplane mode, gives me plenty of battery life to get through a day or a couple days. If I was really worried about it, I would not use my screen as much. I would keep my phone in my pocket more to save battery life. And then another thing I do is I carry an external power bank. You can find them. They're pretty ubiquitous now. You can find them in grocery stores and electronic stores. Just a little, I think I have got a Mophie one is the brand that I like the most, or at least my current one. Otter, Anchor, there's all kinds of Dark Energy, all kinds of different brands. They're all pretty good. And that'll give you, some of them are good for 1 charge, some of them are good for 10 charges. Just depends how much money you want to spend, how much weight you want to carry. So that's a good way to utilize those offline maps and save your battery. Going into our map tools here, this button that looks like a Swiss Army knife. You have a bunch of different tool options. We're kind of coming up on an hour here already. I'm only going to hit on a couple of these really in depth. The first is add waypoint. That's the most common markup people are using. When I click the button, it's going to put a waypoint in the center of the map. If I zoom in here, let me go back online so that my map loads. Let me go back into tools and add a waypoint again. Apologies there. If I want to change the location of that waypoint, all I have to do is click a different spot on the map. And again, I recommend naming your waypoints. This one, I'm just going to do a test. Number 1. I recommend changing your icon as well. This X doesn't really mean anything to me. It's just kind of a placeholder. What was I marking there? You know, did I see an antelope? Is there a cabin there? Is there a hazard, a downed log in the road? Did I see a quail? You know, we have feeder icons, food plots, raccoon, bunch of different turkey ones. I think we have 90 icons, give or take. I'm going to mark Sasquatch on this one because it's fun. And I'm also going to change the color. One of the ways that I organize my waypoints is by color. Everybody does it a little different, but instead of just doing the red X or the orange X, I do, I change the name, I change the icon, be it, an elk or a wallow or a rub or where I park the truck. And then I change the color based on species. So my elk icons on my personal account are brown. My bear ones are blue. My waterfowl ones are green. My grouse ones are yellow. That way I can easily tell at a glance, especially when I'm zoomed out. Hey, was this elk? Was this grouse? Was this turkey? What am I looking at here? Some people will do it by year. You say, Jack, I really only hunt deer. What I would do in that case is make all my waypoints for 2023 blue, for example. Pick whatever color you want. Mark all my rubs, my tree stands, my blinds, my sightings. And then in 2024, I might make them yellow. 2025, I might go purple. That way you can tell, man, every year there's rubs here. Or, man, in 2023, there was rubs here, and then there weren't again for 4 years. Why did they leave? Why did they come back? Oh, they're both wet years. They're both dry years, or they were both years where corn was planted in this field versus some other crop. You can start kind of making those connections. The other way to mark a waypoint on the map, if I get the map back to my location, I'm going to zoom in here. And this is what I use most of the time when I'm out in the field, is I hit mark my location. You can see it dropped a waypoint right where I was standing. Then you can click on it. And this is how you're able to edit any markup, is by clicking on it. You can see it gives me my location, May 2nd, yada, yada. All I do is I go in and edit like it was before. I can choose my icon. I can rename it. I'm not going to do that right now. Just going to delete it because I don't need one at the office here. But I mark my location when I park the truck, and I'll make it a truck icon. I mark my location when I put a tree stand up. Mark my location if I shoot a grouse or flush a grouse and I want to mark that covey. I mark my location when I find a rub or a wallow. And what's cool, if I go to a waypoint, this one I have marked at the office here, I can go in. We talked about changing the color and the name. I can write notes in there. Spooked an elk on September 22nd, whatever you want to put in there. And I can put photos in. So I've taken photos of wallows and put in there, watering holes. I've taken pictures of the deer I've killed and put them in there. And then it's kind of like a journal. Whatever you want to make it, whatever is useful to you. If you don't want to do any of that, don't do any of that. Totally up to you. A couple other markups to touch on quickly. The area shape tool. If I click on that, I can click and highlight an area on the map. And again, rename it. I can change the colors. I can do all that. I can save it, and it tells me the perimeter of that area and the either square footage or acreage. So people use this a lot. Kind of the classic example is for planting food plots. I can highlight the area I want to plant, and I can say, all right, this is such and such acres. I need this much seed. I need this much fertilizer. I need this much herbicide, whatever. And then what's cool is I can change the colors of that. So I can have all of my, I'm not a guy who plants food plots, so I may get this wrong. I can have all of my brassicas a certain color. I can have, if I plant a winter wheat field, I can have them that color. If I plant corn, I can have them that color to be able to get a sense of what that looks like. Similar to the area shape tool, if I close out of this, is my line distance tool, kind of what it sounds like. I can drop points and measure a line. It's going to tell me how far that line is. So you can use this just if you just want to get the perimeter of an area. If you want to see, you know, obviously how far away something is on your computer, there's an option to free draw this line where I can actually take my mouse and draw the curves if I want to trace out a route I want to hike or something like that. That's all available to you there on the line distance. I'm going to save that for now. Apologize, I'm going through this really fast. Trying to keep this as close to an hour as we can today. There's other tools in here. Some of this is beyond the scope of a 101. But again, play around with them. Check out the route builder and the wind calendar. Those are super cool options as well. But I wanted to get to our tracker. This is a tool I use most of the time when I'm out hunting. And it's kind of what it sounds like. It allows you to track yourself. If I hit the start button, which I'm not going to right now because I'm sitting in an office, but I will, when I park the truck, I'll hit that start button. And then as I walk, it's going to track everywhere I go and leave a breadcrumb trail everywhere I walk. You can do this when you're driving too, of course. But it's going to show me everywhere I went. It's going to show me my speed, my distance. And that's useful for a couple of reasons. One is safety. If I'm in a new area, I don't know exactly, you know, the best routes in and out of there. At the end of the day, I can say, all right, I can turn around. I can go into that flashlight or heads up mode and follow my track back out. When I'm done, I can save that track and it's on my map forever until I delete it. So I can use it for sending a buddy in and say, hey, here's the track I hiked, you know, walk along here, you're going to flush some pheasants. Or, hey, I killed an elk. Here's where the meat is. Here's a waypoint. And also here's the track. I can send all of these tracks, all of these waypoints. I can send them all to a friend. So if I have a track laid down to a tree stand, and I'm going to put my buddy in that tree stand, say, hey, here's the track in. I don't have an example of a track on this map right now, but how that works for any markup, be it a track, a waypoint, area shape, I go down and I click this share button, which I'm not going to click right now because it'll show all my contact information in there, but you can just text a buddy a link and it'll pull up on their end. Whether they have a membership or not, you can share markups with them. So you can share, like I said, you got a whole bunch of tree stands set. You can share them all with a buddy. You got some tracks, you know, you name it. That stuff's shareable. The nice thing is they're not able to then turn around and share it with other people. It stays between you two. And if you don't want them to have access, you can revoke it. So if you say, hey, we're going to hunt this tree stand this weekend, here you go. And for whatever reason, you don't want them going back there, you can take that waypoint back off their map so that it's just for you. So that's a very quick rundown of map tools. I am going to stop sharing on my phone here, and then I'm going to start sharing on my computer to show you some web map. If Zoom will let me stop. There we go. You see my room has gone dark here. The automatic lights turned off on me, but that's all right. I think I look better in the dark anyways. And give me one moment. I'm going to pull up the web map. So what I'm going to show you now is what you can pull up on your computer at home when you go to onxmaps.com. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a button you can click to log in. You enter your email and password, the same email and password that you use on your phone. If you use different email addresses, you have a work one on a computer and a personal one on your phone, whatever, doesn't matter. It's got to be the same email and password that you use to set up your account. When you click login, this should look familiar by now. You're going to see the map here. What I think is nice about this is it's a bigger map for scouting purposes, especially. I sit on this all the time. Right now, we're kind of in the middle of tag draw season, where I just applied for Nevada, which I'm probably not going to draw a tag in Nevada this year anyway, but it's fun to dream. I can pull up some different units in Nevada and really scroll around them and kind of fly the unit and take a look. Is this a spot I want to hunt or not? Is this, the type of terrain I want to hunt? Do I think there's going to be elk here during my chosen hunt period? You name it. So you can see I've got a bunch of waypoints on here, because when I mark a waypoint on my phone, it shows up on my computer, and vice versa. They sync together. Now, some of the stuff I just did isn't on here because I haven't refreshed the map. But if I were to do that, you would see those waypoints and area shapes showing on there. So everything I do on this mirrors to my phone and vice versa. Reason I pulled this map up is I wanted to show you our different base map options. And this is available on your phone as well. It's just easier to visualize on the computer. In the lower right-hand corner, I have this button here. Mine says HYB in 2D. That's because I have the hybrid map shown right now. Yours may say SAT. So that's our satellite imagery. And on your phone, this button's in your lower right-hand corner, right above the location button. Should look very similar. So here you can see, this is our satellite imagery. I can zoom in and out. People are familiar with Google Earth. Very similar operation, right? If I click on the topo map, that's giving me what people who, if you're used to the old paper maps, the USGS quads maps, that topography, showing me the elevation bands, showing me the slope, showing me the aspect, what's north facing, what's south facing, all that good stuff. And then what I use 90% of the time is the hybrid map. So the hybrid map is the best of both worlds. It gives you the satellite imagery as well as the topographic lines. So I can look for those benchy areas, those spines, those ridges. And I can also see, hey, this is an area. I gave the example earlier. I was bear hunting. This is kind of a south facing area. It's got some openings in the canopy. It's got this road here. This might be a spot where bears like to hang out because the south facing area is green up the fastest. They like walking these roads because they got grass on them, and bears like me are kind of lazy. They want to stay where it's easier walking. So they'll travel along these roads here, and they'll get into these areas where there's fresh green grass growing. One other thing I wanted to show real quick while we're on the computer, and again, this is something you can do when you're on your phone. If I query the map, if I click on it, again, we're used to this, Lolo National Forest. I can get my hunt unit information. But if I click over to the weather tab, and again, this is available on your phone as well, it's going to give me the weather at the nearest weather station. Obviously, here in the middle of the Lolo National Forest, there's not a weather station right here. It's going to connect to the closest one, but it's going to give me the temperature, the wind, precipitation, sunrise and sunset time is what I use this for the most. So I can make sure I'm legal in Montana. For most species, you can hunt half hour before sunrise to a half hour after sunset. So I can pull that information up. And then I can also get an extended forecast as well if I scroll down. If I keep scrolling, I can get to see an hourly forecast, and I can go down and see the moon phase as well. So we've got all that weather information in there for you as well. Last big thing to touch on here is the search function. We got a few questions on, hey, how can I search for coordinates? If I have GPS coordinates from a Garmin GPS or from another mapping service or whatever, click the search button here on your phone. It's in the top right corner. It looks like a magnifying glass. You tap on that. It's going to look very similar. Make sure you have location selected, and then you can type in coordinates. I'm just going to type in 45. I'm just going to type some random numbers. My second coordinate has to start with a dash. That's a negative because we're in the Western hemisphere here. If you don't put the dash and you just type in, 98 point whatever, it's going to bring you to the Eastern hemisphere. You're going to end up somewhere in Africa, Europe, or Asia. I'm guessing you probably don't want that. So I'm going to go 100. This should put us somewhere in the Great Plains. I'm guessing, I don't know where this is. We're got to be like North Dakota, South Dakota, something like that. I hit enter. It's going to put this little icon right on that spot. If I want to add a waypoint, I can do that. Where did we end up? South Dakota, look at that. So that's how you can search for coordinates. You can copy and paste them, do whatever you need. Another option, I can search for Yellowstone National Park. I can search for different, what's the word I'm looking for? Landmarks. It could be a lake, it could be a town, a county, a mountain, any kind of named landmark on the map. You can see I get all these different options. Yellowstone Post Office, Yellowstone Park Division, Yellowstone National Park. If I click on that in the drop-down menu, if I click on it, it's going to bring me there. I zoom out, there we are, we're in Yellowstone. And the map is going to prioritize what's nearest to where the map is looking. I did a horrible job of explaining that. Here it'll be easier. If I'm going to search for a person, instead of having location selected, I'm going to click landowner. And let's just search for John Murphy. That's a good generic name. You can see I get 7,300 results, but you notice they're all centered. You know, the ones that are at the top are in Wyoming, Montana. There's in New York, Montana, Utah, Idaho. So it's going to choose, you know, kind of the center of the map. This is the one that's closest. I don't have Wyoming private lands turned on, so it's not going to show the name there. If I was looking for a John Murphy in Florida, I would want to move the map to Florida. Physically zoom out, right? And pan the map over there, because it's going to pick up any John Murphy that's in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, right? The Southeast. So it's going to show you the results here. It's going to prioritize ones that are closest to what you're viewing on the map here. And the more information you can give the search, the better result you're going to get. If I know John's middle name, great. If I just know his middle initial, great. Anything you can do to be more specific, that's going to help that search give you a better result. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to go out and turn the light on here real quick. For some reason, they put the sensor outside of this conference room, but that's all right. I'm going to pull up my presentation here one more time. And then we'll get into our question and answer segment. So I feel like we went through that really fast, but it's been an hour and 8 minutes already. So you can tell there's a lot of information within onX. There's a lot here. My best advice is to spend time in the app. I equate it to getting a new bow or a new hunting rifle or shotgun. You're probably going to want to shoot it and practice with it before you go out hunting. You're going to want to familiarize yourself with all the functions, all the different options. The time to use onX for the first time is not opening day. The more time you spend in it, the more familiar you're going to be, the more confident you're going to get. So touch all the buttons, tap all the things. There's nothing you can break. If you're not a current onX member and you're ready to pull the trigger, no pun intended, we do have a discount offer for everybody in here that doesn't have a current membership. If you use the promo code app101, that'll save you 30% off your first year of premium or elite. That's the best discount we offer throughout the year. We quite often will do a 20%, you know, through some podcasts and partners. 30% is going to save you a little bit more money there off a premium or elite. You do have to use that on our website. Can't be used on the App Store or the Google Play Store. They don't accept discounts. Has to be used on onxmaps.com. If you do have any questions, before purchasing, after purchasing, while purchasing. Our email address is help@onxmaps.com. We have the best customer support team. Obviously, I'm biased, but the best customer support team in the business. You send us an email. Our goal is to get back to you within a business day. So if you email us tonight, you're going to get an email back tomorrow. They'll take care of any questions you have. If you have any issues with your account, with your password, with anything like that, shoot them an email. They'll get you taken care of. Some other ways to learn. Our website does have a pretty good help center with some other tutorials. If you're a person that likes to kind of read things versus viewing them, through a video like this, that's a good option for you to read some of those help articles. Our YouTube channel has a lot of videos. All our old master classes are on there, as will be this one in 12 hours, or I guess not 7 in the morning, but 15, 16 hours. We have other YouTube demos where we're highlighting a specific feature. If you want to search for how to use the 2-finger line distance tool or how to do XYZ, YouTube's a great option for that. I mentioned our customer support center. You can email us, you can give us a call, and our upcoming master classes. We're really going to start ramping up as we get into the summer here with some more classes. But next week we have, if you're a duck hunter with a duck dog, we've got a class with Retriever Roadmap with Josh Miller there. We also have, for kind of you Western hunting folks, an effective glassing class with Josh Kirchner, who's a fantastic hunter out of Arizona, talking about how he uses onX to find glassing spots, and then the equipment he uses and kind of his strategies for when he gets there. Mentioned a giveaway earlier. I'm going to have Dan post the giveaway link in the chat right now. So click on that link when he posts it there. The giveaway does close at midnight tonight, May 2nd. So if you're watching this after May 2nd, I'm sorry, the giveaway is closed, but we do these giveaways on just about every class. We give away different shirts, hats, different partner products and things like that. So get yourself entered. I will email all of the winners tomorrow. So you'll get an email from me directly saying, hey, you've won, and then we'll get it shipped out to you. And let's get into our question and answers. I'm going to stop sharing and pull up some of the questions that we had sent in from folks. Question we got about, what if something's wrong on the map? Can we report that to you? Yes, we do have an option. If you click on a private parcel, for example, you say, oh man, I know this person, they just sold this land and it's got a new owner now. You can tap on the parcel along the bottom where that edit screen was, or that edit button, I should say. If you scroll all the way over, the farthest one to the right will say report an error. That'll take you through where we'll ask you a few questions, and it'll say, what type of error is this? Is this private land? Is this government land? Is this something else? Maybe there's a road that's mislabeled or something like that. It'll ask you for some more information. If you say this is a private land error, the owner name is wrong, we'll ask you, do you know who the correct owner is? You can say, yes, it's John Doe owns it now. You hit submit, that goes right to our mapping team. They'll get in contact with the county, or if it's trail data, if we got to get in contact with the Forest Service or something, we'll get in contact with the managing agency, verify that, yep, indeed, John Doe does own this parcel now. And then we'll make that change within the map. Another question we get often is, how often is the map updated? Depends what we're talking about within the map. Parcel data, we try to match the county update as close as possible. So some counties only update their data once a year, so we update it once a year. Some counties will update once a month. We try to update once a month as best as we can, as often as they make that data available to us. Imagery gets updated a little bit less often because they're flying airplanes out. It's a little bit harder to collect that data. So that should be about every 3 years or so. We do have some new imagery options coming up very soon that will allow you to kind of get more updated aerial imagery in a specific area. Stay tuned for that. I believe this week that announcement should be coming. I don't want to mention anything just yet in case it's not quite out yet, but we do have some new imagery options coming out. Let's see. Are you able to share your location with other onX users? So we mentioned being able to share a waypoint. As long as you have service, you're able to do that. At the present moment, we don't have a way to show like other members of your party, like live on the map. Sometimes we call that a buddy tracker. That is something we are looking at. The one hard part there is it would only work within cell service, at least with the current cell technology. You'd have to, those phones would have to be able to connect to each other, show your location. But that's something we have heard from people. That is something we are looking at. That might be a feature we're able to have in the future where you're able to see other members of your hunting group. Looks like that's all the questions we have. I want to thank everybody again for stopping by tonight, and taking the time to learn with us. If you do have any other questions, help@onxmaps.com is your best resource. That's our customer support team, as well as our online support center. Future masterclasses coming up as well. You can take a look at those on our website. And again, just want to thank everybody for being here and make sure you get entered to that giveaway. And I hope everybody has a good spring hunting season, and we'll see you on the next one.